Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at the completely redesigned ASICS GEL-Cumulus 26. We're also going to take a look at the 25 to see what changed, and then we also have the thicker version, which is basically the ASICS Gel Nimbus 26. So let's run with it. Before we get started, I do want to say that these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video, and this file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. If you're not familiar with the ASICS running shoe lineup, I don't blame you because there's a ton of shoes. The Cumulus is their premium max cushion neutral daily trainer designed to tackle a wide variety of runs. It's also great for walkers as well. It's kind of ASICS Swiss Army knife, if you will. Now, if you like the Cumulus but need a little bit more cushion, or if you just like a lot of cushion for the pushing, as they say, that is where the Nimbus comes in, as it has a thicker midsole and it really kind of geared towards those longer and slower runs. And if you're someone who needs some stability but likes the Cumulus, that is where the GT2000 comes in, as it's the stability version of the Cumulus 26. And then if you like the Nimbus but then again need some more guidance or stability, they can go to the ASICS GEL-Cumulus. So I hope that explains it, kind of gives you a general idea of the ASICS premium running shoes. The Cumulus is $140, that's standard price point for this category. The Nimbus, however, is $20 more, coming in at $160. ASICS added 1 more millimeter to the midsole this year. We have 38.5 millimeters in the heel, 30.5 in the forefoot for that same 8 millimeter drop. And then if we go over to the Nimbus, this has a bit more stack height with 42 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. And even though the midsole gets larger, we do lose a decent amount of weight. Last year it was 9.4 ounces, this year it's 8.9, and that is significantly lighter compared to the Nimbus, which comes in at 10.8 ounces. Moving on to the upper, we have a completely redesigned engineered mesh. I thought the breathability was good, just not as good compared to what we saw last year on the Cumulus 25. The fit is true to size with regard to length, although I did find the fit to be rather narrow through the midfoot and especially the toe box. It feels like they brought it in just a bit, especially when compared to last year and the Nimbus. The tongue is very similar to what we see on the Nimbus. It's a rather elastic knit material, which is thicker towards the top to give you some additional padding. However, the big difference between the tongue on the Cumulus and the tongue on the Nimbus is the tongue on the Nimbus is much more elastic and stretchy. You can just pull this in a much easier manner, while the tongue here on the Cumulus, while it does have a little bit of give to it, just isn't as elastic. However, if we compare the tongue to what we see here on the 25, it's much more traditional in nature, moderate amount of padding towards the top, and is in line with historical ASICS running shoes. Moving towards the back of the shoe, the heel counter itself is incredibly stiff and rigid. In fact, it's one of the most rigid heel counters I have seen in some time. Now this absolutely helps with the lockdown. I thought security here was great. And yes, the fit is a bit narrow, and I think that kind of all ties together, but the lockdown here, absolutely superb. Definitely better than last year, and I thought last year's was good. If we compare the upper to the Nimbus has a knit fabric, which is warmer. However, there is more padding in the ankle and Achilles area, and I did find it to be slightly more accommodating as well with additional volume compared to the Cumulus. Moving on to the midsoles, it's a little bit confusing because on paper, they're all Flight Foam Blast Plus, which for me doesn't make much sense because each of these versions feels completely different. So I will say I think the formulation for Flight Foam Blast Plus differs from each of the shoes in front of me. Now underneath that, or I guess inside of that, we also have something called PureGEL. So underneath the heel on each one of these shoes is a tiny bit of gel. ASICS kind of completely revamped what they've done with gel. Typically in the past, it was along the heel and a small dot under the forefoot. And now it's just kind of a small slab of gel directly underneath your heel. Now personally, I've never really been able to feel it. ASICS says it helps with shock absorption, but it is there nonetheless. I also need to bring up the outsole because it plays a big role in how the Cumulus 26 performs. If we flip the shoe over, you'll notice there is no outsole rubber. It's a rubberized foam this year. ASICS calls it FLUIDRIDE. And we compare it to last year, we had a decent amount of thick rubber coverage. So it's a clear departure from a more traditional setup. It allows the shoe to be lighter, which I think is why ASICS uses this method. Now the other thing is this kind of thick layer of rubberized foam extends the full length of the shoe. It stiffens things up and kind of keeps the foam together, providing a slightly firmer experience compared to what we saw last year, although I will say it feels more bouncy or has a little bit more spring to it. I'll also say on top of all of that, the rocker geometry is very subtle throughout the entire shoe, where the rocker was mostly noticeable towards the front on the 25, and the same kind of goes for the Nimbus. The rocker geometry much more noticeable as you get towards the front, where here we have a really long curve to the shoe, and I think this has a long kind of smooth rocker curvature to it. I also found it quite interesting that when you do the thumb test here and kind of squeeze the foam, it feels softer here on the Cumulus compared to the Nimbus. However, when you start running the shoe, the Nimbus is definitely the softer one underfoot, mainly because it has 4 or 5 more millimeters of stack height, but then also the Cumulus has that bottom layer of rubberized foam like we talked about before, which contains the Flate Foam Blast Plus. I do think this complete redesign of the Cumulus 26 makes it a faster neutral daily trainer. It's much lighter and much more nimble compared to the Nimbus, and lighter compared to the 25 as well, with a more aggressive rocker geometry and a slightly stiffer platform. And all of that kind of pairs together to give you a much more dynamic ride. This becomes a more aggressive option and it kind of departs from the more traditional geometries we've seen from ASICS in the past. As far as things that could potentially be improved, I do wish the tongue was more elastic and was more closely aligned to what we have on the Nimbus. Just a lot stretchier here on the Nimbus, which makes it easier to get your foot in and out of the shoe. The other thing is the toe box felt a bit cramped to me. I hope they add additional volume in future iterations. And then last, the outsole. While the grip was fine, I'm a little bit concerned about longevity just because foam is foam and doesn't last as long as good old-fashioned rubber, and I'm a little bit concerned about like asymmetrical wear as I use this shoe more. But otherwise, I think it's a solid update. It is significantly lighter compared to the Nimbus and about, again, half an ounce lighter compared to last year. I don't think adding rubber would have, added that much weight, and because this is a workhorse neutral daily trainer, probably would have helped in the overall longevity. But like I mentioned before, this is a faster option, has that nice smooth rocker geometry to it, and I think it's again, a completely different direction for the Cumulus from we've seen in prior editions. Well, that concludes the review. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this complete redesign. I would love to hear from you. I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.